of introduction, I think.
Uh, s- Good evening to everyone. On behalf of Satishodak Academics, we invite you all for this today's discussion. As you know, we have been organizing series of lectures on Dalit food cultures. This is a part of the upcoming volumes on Dalit food cultures. There are few literature writings which are published on Dalit food cultures. However, the recent Sahu Patole book created a huge interest among scholarly people on to engage and explore on Dalit food cultures. 3 months back, we have announced call for papers. Uh, we received huge response across India, both from senior scholars and young new generation of scholars. And the scholars are writing chapters for the edited volumes. Uh, Along with me and Dr. Anand Kumar, we decided, along with the team, so we decided to conduct online discussion by the contributors so that they will get some insights to improve their papers, and also it will be useful for the larger audience. We have conducted so far more than 12 presentations, which are available on Satyashodak Academics YouTube channel. So anybody who are interested, they can visit and watch it. So today we have a presentation by Anvesh and Sai Kumar, and they are PhD scholars from Delhi University. I invite Dr. Anand Kumar to formally introduce today's speakers. Dr. Anand Kumar, over to you.
So, thank you, Professor Gopani ji. It's really an honor and as well as a responsibility on my shoulder. So, introducing such speakers is really a very responsible job. So, I am Dr. Anand Kumar, as you all know. Those who are not aware about me, I am Dr. Anand Kumar, Research Associate at Center de Sciences Humans, New Delhi. This is a French institute working on some projects regarding related to caste and geographical inequalities in India. So, as the Professor Gopani introduced about this lecture series, this is a part of our edited value, which is about to come very soon. Means we are working towards. So, for this, we have organized so many lectures, and this is, I think, the 13th lecture for this lecture series. So the today's session is will be taken by two emerging scholars from University of Delhi, Professor Gopani already introduced. So the topic of today's session is the beyond the stigma of Antu, which literally translatable as untouchable, if I'm right. So they will be speaking around the stigma of Antu mapping Atmiya archive in Telugu food, Telugu Dalit food cultures. So the first speakers is Chetupalli Anvesh, who is a PhD scholar at the Department of English, University of Delhi. The area of his research interest lies in the intersection of caste, gender, and literary discourse, especially focusing upon the marginalized sections, or more to say, towards Dalit women or the cause of their victimhood and focusing the emancipation of Dalit women in larger sense. Anvesh was born in rural Telangana, India, and his literary works and research as well primarily focuses on the rural Telangana states. And he has translated and published three collections of writings in Telugu and English, which primarily focuses on women experience and the perpetual play of social exclusion. His publication have appeared in leading journals where he critically examines question of caste, gender identity, and social justice. So, the in broader sense, what his interdisciplinary research focuses on the literature as a site of negotiation that changes and change between social realities and the business. So in this way, Chetupalli is a very potential scholar and he has a keen interest among or keen interest in Dalit in very larger sense and food studies very emerging. So I hope it will be very good topic for him and he'll be handling all the things in very details. And the second speaker with us is Komire Sai Kumar, who is also a PhD scholar at the Department of English, University of Delhi. And the area of his research interest primarily lies in caste, culture, language, translation, and gender discourse in India. So born in Telangana, he's a research also and academic writing as well, rooted deeply in Telangana rural areas. So he has published more than five, six papers in leading journals. So his papers basically critically examines caste, culture, identity, and social justice. So his interdisciplinary research brings fresh marginal perspective to literature and research that amplifying the voices of the marginalized people. So this is all about the speakers, and I hope they are going to speak on this topic that is beyond the stigma of harm. And they are going to speak about 40 to 45 minutes, and after that we'll be having Q&A session. So over to you, Chetupalli and Comrade Sankumar.
Thank you very much for the introduction, sir, and thank you for being here, everyone. And we are glad that we are here in this room with you all today. So I'll dive into the topic now. So the title of our paper is and this talk as well is the Atmiya Archive. It's written. Let me say that word first. Actually, Atmiya. It's a Telugu word. Maybe it's there in India as well, but it's a Telugu word, so it means literally translate to soulful. It means intimate if you take the another meaning as well. So it means something that belongs to the self, to the inner world, not the public world. So the Atmiya space is the space of the family. Let's say now we are talking about the Dalit family, Dalit food culture. So it's about the space is about the kitchen of a Dalit family. So now the full title I'll be say reclaiming the stigma of Antu in Telugu Dalit food culture. So now Antu is it's written in Telugu as well here. If you see like if you are from Telugu speaking states or if you have grown up around Telugu speaking household, there is very good chance that you have heard about this word. Maybe in your childhood, maybe in the warning, don't touch that, or it has become unto, or don't be near them. They are unto people. So unto literally means, as Anand Kumar also said, touch or sticky. So, but in the context of the caste, in the context of the Telugu village, Telugu society, the agraram, the social order of Andhra Pradesh and Telangana, unto means somewhere far away, so far darker than that. It means ritual pollution. It means contamination. It means even social death as well. So today we are going to trace the full journey of this word from a weapon of humiliation unto into what we are calling the Atmiya Archive, a living record of survival and then creativity, dignity, and also cultural assertion. Just a minute. Yeah. So before we go into the depth of our argument, let me give a just a clear, brief map of where we are going today, so that we can move through the work. You also know where you are and what is coming next as well. So we have structured this presentation into 6 parts. So for the better understanding, first one is introduction. Here we define, talk about unto, and we explain why food in the caste system is never just food. And the section 2 is theoretical framework. we introduce the scholars we have taken, we have read, and ideas our paper build upon. And we work with the concept like gastropolitics, sensory violence, and what Anand Teltumde calls hidden apartheid as well. So section 3 is what we call the literary counter archive. And this is really at the heart of the paper we have written. So we look at the three major Dalit literary works and show how they document a completely different relationship with food, a relationship that is not about shame, not just about shame, but also about the soul as well. So, and the fourth section is the political turn. We come to the Karamchedu massacre of 1985, and we mentioned Chunduru and what it meant for the Telugu Dalit political movement and how the kitchen became a site of open cultural pride as well. So, and then section 5 is about nutritional sovereignty. And there are few coinages me and Sai intended to go with this paper writings, and we'll discuss it in deep while we go further in this presentation, and counter aesthetics as well. So here we bring the science into the argument and show with evidence that the Dalit diet was not inferior as it was mentioned, as it was conditioned to the Indian society. So it was intelligent actually. And finally, section 6, our conclusion, where we present the Atmiya Archiva as new methodological way of reading, or not completely a methodological way, like a new lens of reading and understanding Dalit life and history. Moving further, so the literally meaning, as I said, is touch actually. If you touch anyone, or it's not about polluted touch or anything, it's basically a touch or sticking. So in everyday Telugu, like if your saliva or if your lips touches a vessel, if you eat from a plate and leave food on it, that food is called Antu. The vessel is now Antu. So it has been touched, it has been used. So it carries a it carries a trace of a person, maybe known or unknown one. So now here is what this becomes deeply systemically painful. In the Brahminical Hindu practice, I'm not talking about the Brahmins, I'm talking about the Brahminical practice. So, and we are speaking specifically about the social world of the Telugu states. So the concept of Antu was applied not just to food and vessel. So it was applied to the people, and even entire communities of people were declared unto by birth, and it applies to every scheduled caste in India. So the touch was pollution. Their presence near a cooking space was considered filthy. The food they had eaten from, even their leftover food was called unto and given back to them. So let me say this slowly because the cruelty of it needs to be understood fully. So the Dalit food community was told your touch makes things impure. And then, as a direct result of that declaration, they were given the leftover food, the scraps, or the discarded, the things no one else wanted actually. And they were told to eat it. Think about what this does to a person, to a family over the generation. You are told every single day your touch is contamination, your touch is filthy, and the proof of that contamination is what you are served for your meal. The plate itself is teaching you your place in this scenario. So scholars like K. Satyanarayana Professor and Rawat describe this very well. So they say that the caste system perpetuates itself not only by the physical segregation, be it VADA or distancing humans among the humans, but by creating a Dalit identity that becomes inseparably linked in the dominant imagination and often in the Dalit mind too, with the abandoned and the contaminated. So you do not just live apart from the main village. You begin to believe you deserve to live apart. So that is what generation of Antu logic does. But and this is the question our entire paper is built upon. And is that complete story? Is the Antu story only a story of humiliation and suffering? Like we argue while making a paper that not completely no. And that is what the Atmiya archive is all about. And the next one is moving to the next theoretical part. Um, Before we go into the literature and the politics, we need to lay down the theoretical foundation of this paper to understand the concept we have used in this full paper. So we need to introduce the tools we are using to think with. The central concept we work with is gastropolitics. This is the idea that food, what you eat, what you are allowed to eat, or what is given to you and what is denied to you, what smells are associated with your community, it's everything is a political instrument. Like food is never innocent. Food is one of my friends were asking yesterday, like if there is food, and what is the difference between food and Dalit food? Why there is food and Dalit food? So food is never innocent. So in a hierarchical society like India, food is one of the most powerful weapons in the arsenal of domination. It is used very well by the dominant system. So to build this argument, we draw on our four major scholars. These are the four major, like we have included others as well. These are the four major. The first one is Gopal Guru, who argues that the food in the caste system is the language of touch. The way you relate to food expresses and reinforces your position in this Indian social order. And then B.R. Ambedkar as well, who traced the historical roots of Dalit dietary stigma as well and showed that it was deliberately constructed. It was a political decision dressed up as a religious tradition. Like we have used in the theoretical building, but later we realized that we have still chance to include his narratives, include his experiences as well, taking consideration like waiting for visa, some other texts as well. So, and the other one is Dolly Keegan, who introduced the concept of dirty food and shows how smell itself, the most intimate of the senses, is weaponized as a tool of caste-based dehumanization. And finally, Anand Teltumde, who calls Indian caste system an hidden apartheid. And shows how spatial segregation and denial of common resources like water and forced consumption of inferior food, I mean, named inferior food, or the material bricks and the mortar of caste. So together, these four scholars in this framework, like they work towards what we are intended to do. And talking about each theoretical framework, I'm sorry. So first, Gopal Guru, food as language of touch, as I told you. So Gopal Guru's most important contribution to our framework is the seemingly simple, but actually a radical claim. Like food is never a neutral substance. So he says like food is a language. It speaks. When you share food with someone, you are saying you belong to me. You are known to me. You are part of my community. So your body is not a threat to mine. But when you refuse to share that food, when you eat first and walk away and tell someone to eat what is left, and you are saying the opposite of that. You are saying you are not part of my world. Your body is danger to me. So in the caste system, this language is used every day at every meal in the Indian society to teach the Dalit that he does not belong to the very human world. So Guru identified three specific mechanisms of this food language. The first he calls food as language of touch, where the Dalit experience of food is inseparable from the Dalit experience of humiliation. Every meal eaten from a separate plate placed on the ground at a distance or from the main household. So every glass of water even received by pouring without touching the without the giver's hand touching the cup as well. So every festival where Dalits were waited outside the feast have outside while the feast is happening inside. So all of this is the daily lesson. The lesson is you are beneath the human. So the second mechanism is what Guru calls Antu as the gastric violence. So even the air breathed by the Dalit near a cooking pot, like was framed in Brahminical logic, is refilling, and it was there in Manusmruti as well. And the consequences of these are the Dalits are compelled to eat his own social status. He physically, and just the proof of his inferiority, the leftover, the scrap, or the Antu at every single meal. So the third mechanism, what Guru notifies is that he calls the moral shame of, the moral ecology of shame. So the Dalit kitchen is permanently and relentlessly compared to the sacred pure kitchen of the temple or maybe the dominant caste household. Their kitchen uses so-called pure ingredients following ritual protocols, produces food worthy of God. Dalits are not allowed to uh, produce a naivedyan to God as well. So the Dalit kitchen in this framing is its dark mirror, impure, rough associated with death and waste. So this comparison is not occasional actually. So it is structural, it is generational. It is built in the very way that the village is organized, who lives where, who eats what, and who cooks near whom. So our paper challenges all three of these mechanisms. And the challenge begins in the Dalit kitchen itself because as he notices food as language of touch. So the next one we are uh, considering is Ambedkar. He talks about the historical roots. So, if you come to Ambedkar, whose 1948 work, The Untouchables Who Were There, is absolutely foundation to our paper and to any serious study of Dalit food culture as well. We consider. So, Ambedkar was not interested in simply documenting the suffering of Dalits. Like he wanted to understand the mechanism. He asked a very direct question: Why were Dalits mere untouchable? Not in the philosophical sense at all, but historically, like what actually made them Dalit. So his answer is the answer is simple that makes all stop and think is what he called the theory of the broken man. So Ambedkar argued that the ancestors of the today's Dalit communities were not a permanently separate group since the beginning of the Indian history. So they were communities who at a particular historic turning point, and the decline of Buddhism and the reassertion of Brahminical Hinduism, those are who refused to conform that. So they refused to conform to vegetarianism. So they continued eating meat, which had until that point been a fairly common practice across many communities in the subcontinent. So now here is what Ambedkar calls a great hypocrisy, and I think this is one of the most piercing observations in all of the Indian social thought as well. Upper caste communities, particularly Brahminical ideology, gradually gave up meat eating in order to claim higher ritual status. Like we are not claiming blindly that they used to eat meat. It was there in the Vedas as well. It was there in many of the yagnas as well. So they gradually gave up meat eating and in order to claim higher ritual status actually. So to distinguish themselves from Buddhists, to assert their spiritual superiority, they adopted vegetarianism. Good, that's fine, and that is their own choice. But then, having abandoned the practice, they turned around and declared those who still eat meat or beef to be permanently and hereditarily impure. So, the very practice that had once had been common across communities was now the ultimate maker of pollution. And those who practiced it were cast out, placed outside the village, denied access to wells and temples and schools, even as we all know about the Dalit history. So, we can see the genius of the violence here. You abandon the practice, you rewrite the history so that the practice was always impure, and then you see the stigma of the practice of permanently subordinate those who could not or would not abandon it. So when we apply to the Telugu Dalit context, Telugu, particularly to the Madiga communities that we are working on, and who work with leather, woods, and skinned dead cattle, who eat beef, we see this pattern exactly. So these communities were not choosing impurity. They were doing some necessary work for their livelihood after all these historical events. So the community that did this work was fed, and then that same food was used to mark them as untouchable forever. Ambedkar conclusion and our paper stand firmly behind this is that dietary hierarchy is a historical construct. It was created, it was maintained by power, and it can be challenged. That was like I would love to answer my friend when he questioned me and Sai was discussing this same thing in the morning. Like there isn't any Dalit food. Like it was constructed. It was constructed that Dalits eat these kinds of food, which is filthy and which is untouchable. So they have carefully articulated. They have carefully constructed this chain of events, this chain of food types, and made them untouchables and made them Dalit food separate to the common table of food. And just a minute, I lost it. Um, can you see this?
Yes, your
Yeah, yeah,
PPT is visible.
yeah. Just a minute. Something has happened. Now I think. And the next two people I want to introduce in one slide is like two scholars in one slide. Um, our third and fourth pillar of this theoretical work, Dolly Keegan and Ananten Tumble. Like we are taking the argument from the historical into the sensory and the spatial segregation. So let us start with the Dolly Keegan. Keegan's work focus on what she calls dirty food and especially on the role of smell. This might seems like a smell or small or very unusual focus, but our argument is important. Primarily, she worked on the Naga communities of northeastern Texas. Some might argue that Dolly Keegan she was working on the northeastern tribals mostly. And how does this fits into in the framework of Dalit kitchens? Also, maybe though are different ethnographical or racial differences are there, but the discrimination that is based upon is it can be relatable with the Dalits here in the Telugu state. It can be relatable in to the Dalits anywhere. So she showed that the Dalit food calling ganda or dirty or smelly and unpalatable is not a neutral observation. Like it is not an honest sensory response. It is a symbolic violence. The dominant culture has, over the centuries, trained its members like to experience the smell uh, of Dalit food, the smell of the dried fish, or the fermented rice, or the organ meat that is dried, and the leather working as disgusting. So this disgust is not natural. It is learned. It is culturally produced, and it is then used as a tool. Because once you establish that the Dalit food smells bad, that the Dalit kitchens are unpleasant, and you have a justification for the generation to tell that for every form of exclusion. So you cannot live in their neighborhood if you say this to the generation. Because your food will smell. You cannot eat at your table because your food is dirty. As they say, you cannot come near our well because you will contaminate it. So the smell is not something small, as I told, because it becomes a border, a sensory apartheid line here. So now Tell Tumde gives this spatial argument to go with the Kikan's sensory argument. Tel Tumde calls Indian caste system hidden apartheid, as I mentioned in the very first case as well. So like the South African apartheid, that's open as we all know in 1950. So we also used ideas of racial pollution and the fear of mixed contact. The Indian caste system maintains the strict spatial segregation. So, and this segregation is nowhere more visible than in the Telugu villages or Telugu social structure. So every traditional Telugu village has its main settlement and it has its own Dalit Wada or SC colonies or Arijan Wada, which a separate cluster of homes physically remote from the main village and often without proper roads or even the drainages. So the common water tank, the common well, the Dalits were denied access, like as we all know, and the upper caste households would pour water for Dalit visitors, so they would not touch the vessel. So and what were the consequences of for food? The Dalit household was last in the line for every resource. So they received the oldest grain. Listen to it very carefully when we say they received the oldest grain. Like there are multiple reasons that Sai will elaborate in his slides presentation why they have received the oldest grain. The worst cut, the food that had already passed through the upper caste household, and then the forced consumption of inferior food, called inferior food, was not at all accidental scarcity. It was, as Tel Tumde says, the architecture of the control. So reclaiming Dalit food then is not just a cultural act; it is challenge to the architecture of the village, like the whole challenging the architecture of the village structure itself. And talking about the Atmiya archive, and I'll just give the introduction. So this is where our paper makes its central argument. Well, we have seen what Antu is. We have seen the theoretical framework that explains how food was weaponized, the humiliation, the forced conception of leftover, the sensory border, the architecture of the spatial exclusion. We understand the violence in different form here. So, but inside the Dalit home, inside the Dalit kitchen, in the morning when something was placed on the ground and fire was being started, something else was also happening. Something the mainstream archive did not document at all. Something that did not appear in the government records, in the Brahminical literature, or the colonial records at all. So that something is what we call the Atmiya archive. So you might ask me a question: why do you want to use? Why do you both use Atmiya instead of soulful? Like, we were very conscious about it, because firstly, linguistic, we have seen, like, there are certain words that cannot be translated very well into English. The soul of the meaning, the soul of the words. So like Telugu words like tapana, these are very intimate words. Like, in English, it can be translated with one or two words, but it does not carry the true meaning of it. So that's why we intended to keep the Telugu word in this, Atmiya, soulful. It indicates soulful, intimate, and belonging to the self, truly belonging to the self. So truly belonging to the Dalit community, truly belonging to the Dalit self. So the archive, as we know, a collection, a record, a body of knowledge, performances, or practice as well. The Atmiya archive is in like, we define it as the intimate domestic world of the Dalit family, the space where where what was discarded by the dominant caste was received, rethought, and transformed. I'll repeat it again, but like, what was discarded by the dominant caste was received, rethought, and then transformed. So in this space, scraps were not experienced as shameful. Like, they are shameful. We are not romanticizing any kind of oppression here. They were worked with. They were transformed later. So shaddi in general, or saddi we call. So the overnight fermented remnant rice, now hugely celebrated as a healthy food in the Indian communities. But it was initially the ritually polluted leftover. The leftover food was fermented overnight and eaten by the Dalits. So the food that upper caste household threw away or fed to the servants in the Dalit kitchen, saddi was the central of the meal. It is the central of the meal, and it can be seen in the literature we have taken, and it will be further discussed. Like, it is eaten mixed with water, with green chili, or maybe small piece of pickle, or eaten in the common vessel by the whole family sometimes, eaten by everyone in the single vessel, and it is distributed from the same vessel, uh, like, sitting together. So this was not poverty management. This was their community. We can say community management in the Dalit kitchen. So this is something breaking the stigma they have attributed to the Dalit community. So I have used Vadiyalu to be very modest, but people at our places, we call Vadiyalu is veg one. So Vatti Mukalu or Vatti Tunukalu. It's like sun-dried meats, organ meats that upper caste household discarded, were preserved with salt and turmeric, and dried in the sun, stored for weeks, and used carefully across the meals, and many weeks for them. It's their old diet. So this is a sophisticated food preservation technique, if you ask me. And even the wild greens, forest tubers, and plants that pure kitchens would never dream of cooking. These were gathered, and with detailed botanical knowledge by Dalit women, and turned into nutritious and flavorful preparations. So I was there in Attapadi for a research, and I did not include that in this, because as I was working, we were working on Telugu state. So Attapadi is somewhere. So we saw people making curries from the herbs, from the plants that were considered nothing useful by the most of the people. And I asked them, like, it is their daily food and it is very nutritional. So they have a very huge knowledge, a traditional ecological knowledge about these the tubes, like, because the veg is attributed to the superior dominant caste actually, but these women know much about the nutritional values and new plants than the upper caste kitchen prepares every day. So at the center of all this was, as I said, Dalit women's labor, like their knowledge, their creativity that has come till to this generation, and we called it technology of the staff. And we mean it as the highest possible compliment. It is not technology of poverty. It is a technology of intelligence operating under the conditions of extreme injustice. So as like we as I told you, like we are not romanticizing any of the condition, any of the oppression. So even for the Chatterjee has this issue. Like we are talking about the resilience. We are talking about the survival that was created alongside the discrimination and not behind the discrimination. It was created alongside the discrimination. So this is what Atmiya archive is like, the transformation of what the caste system called social death into the cultural assertion. And then literary counter archives. So I'll be real quick. So where do you find the Atmiya archive, the trusted, the real archive most clearly documented? In Telugu literature, we would find like we would able to read, not the only reading, we would able to read those lines. So this is one of the most significant things of the about Telugu Dalit literary tradition. Like, it did not wait for academic historians to arrive. Like as Anand Kumar and Chandran, they were also mentioning, very few research has been done in this, and Dalit kitchens of Marathwada is one such thing that has pioneered this thing. So, but in Telugu, like they never waited for the academic historians to arrive. Like it documented its own life. They did not mention that it is about kitchen, but under the stories, under the narrative they have written, they documented their own life. Like it created its own record. The kitchen, the meal, the smell of the food, the texture of the grain, all of it is there in the writings, in the Telugu writing. Like we have identified three works as the pillars of what we call the literary counter archive. First is Untouchable Spring. It's very well known, and originally it is called Antarani Vasantam by G. Kalyan Rao, and it is an epic novel centering Madiga and Madiga community life. So its central contribution to our paper is the transformations of Saddi, leftover rice, and Saddi as Vindu as well. Not Vindu, something else, but Saddi as Vindu as well, like feast of their soul. And second is My Father Balaya. And even this is well known by Y.B. Satyanarayana, published in 2011. It's a Madiga family memoir set in Telangana during the Nizam period and after. So it documents about the grains and forest produce that sustain the family and shows them a source of love and survival, but not markers of inferiority. And the third one is Gabilam, because it is very confusing to see Gabilam here, the bat. It's very long poem by Gurran Joshua, written by Gurran Joshua. So one of the most celebrated pieces of Telugu literature ever written. So the bat excluded from the temple, living in the dark margins, living at the edge of the villages, away from the village, is the Dalit metaphor. And through it, Joshua creates one of the most powerful statements of sensory reclamation in Indian literary history. So actually, it's a theological dialogue between the God and the bad, between questioning all the hierarchies. In that lines, like we are able to, Sai and me, able to find the connection. Like Dalit kitchens, even though he did not explicitly talk about the Dalit kitchens, like when we talk about the sensory and materialistic things of Dalit life and Brahminical hierarchy, Dalit kitchens are never inseparable from those things. Like we have read those between the lines, and the one possible reading we have made from this. So before handing over this section, I'll conclude with this one slide talking about G. Kalyan Ram's Untouchable Spring. As we all know, it's a monumental novel. It spans through four generations, multiple generations, move across the landscape of colonial Dad in Andhra Pradesh, and gives voice of us to Madiga communities who had been largely invisible in Telugu literary tradition. So, for our paper, we focus on two specific things that Kalyan Rao does with food. The first is what we call the Kamadhenu inversion, as you can see in the PPT as well. So, if you are very good with, if you know into mythological stories, Kamadhenu is a divine cow of Brahminical mythology. So the sacred wish-filling animals. So the symbol, it is considered as a symbol of purity, and you all know very well the time we are in, of abundance and of the blessings of the gods as well. So to eat beef, to eat its meat in this mythology is completely an error, completely a sin. So the cow must not be harmed. So Rao takes this mythology and turns it inside out completely, deliberately, and with great literary skill as well. So in his novel, the same cow in the novel, in the it's a fiction, but we cannot say that fiction never carries the real stories, because narrative testimony and novels social referent is can be considered very well in these fiction works as well. So in the novel, in the story, the same cow in death gives the Dalit community life. When a cow dies in the village, it is the Madhika community that comes to skin the animal, to collect and distribute the meat communally, to use the hide for their craft of leather wood, and work that sustain the entire village need for footwear, for agriculture tools, for drum heads, for festivals as well. So this is not defilement. This is the community sustaining itself. So this is, if anything, more sacred than the temple ritual. If anything, more sacred than the temple ritual, because it is real. It keeps people alive. So Kalyan Rao simply does not present this apologetically. He presents it with dignity, with pride, with the understanding that the Kamadhenu of the upper caste temple gave nothing to the Dalits, but the actual cow in reality in death gave everything to Dalits to survive. So the second and more tender analysis is what we call sadhi as radical intimacy, chaddi or sadhi. So it's an overnight food, rice that has been cooked, left in water overnight, slightly fermented in the morning. In the apaka sense, it's ultimately unto food, like it has been sitting. So it has been touched by air, by time, by a vessel that has been used. It is given to Dalits where nothing fresh is available. So, but what, like if we watch in what Kalyan Rao does with Sadhi in this novel, families sit together. There are multiple generations in this novel, and they sit together in the morning before the day works begins. It was there in My Father Balaya as well, but I will continue about that. But even in this, before the day work begins, they sit together. The sabdi is mixed with water and slightly sour, and then maybe a small something salty. And in the moment of sitting together, sharing from a common vessel, as I mentioned earlier as well, and there is a laughter as well. So there is a conversation as well. There is a warmth of being a family as well. Rao calls this sadhi as Vindu, a feast actually, a feast of this soul. So not feast of the agraram, the feast of the landlord, many things, but the feast of the people who are fully present with each other in their meal. So the stigma of the leftover is broken. The sadhi is not a sign of poverty. It is the basis of soulful and independent community. And this is the argument of our paperming. The Atmiya bond at the common plate, the very common plate, the intimacy of eating together in the same vessel, which were considered unto, is more spiritually sustaining and more deeply human than the feasts of the agraram, from which Dalits were completely excluded. So you do not need the master's food to have dignity. You need community, and community was nothing the Dalit world had, that the Dalit world had in abundance. So moving to the next slide, I would love to hand over this time to my co-author, Sai.
Thank you, Anna. Yeah, thanks for the opportunity. I would continue where Anvesh Anna has left. Yeah, we were talking about literary counter archive by Y.B. Satyanarayana. In the second text, My Father Balaya, we have taken My Father Balaya. It deals with the Madhika kitchen in Telangana from the feudal Nizam era to railway quarters. If you see here, how in this text, in this novel, biographical novel written by Y.B. Satyanarayana about his father, he views grain as wage, the common plate, and forest harvest. How Balaya received coarse millet, or sorghum as a wage labor. What the dominant caste considered it as inferior grains, sustained the family's physical and emotional life. Like during this feudal Nizam era to railway quarters, he belonging to Madiga community entered into railway quarters. They have provided a wage as is Jonna or Sajja. And coming to the common plate, sharing a large common plate strengthened the Atmiya bond between parents and children. Cooking was done with a sense of holiness and nurturing despite minimal provisions. Despite the minimal provisions, despite the small amount of resources, they have fulfilled their children's appetite and nurtured them about the like sustaining with minimal resources as well. Coming to forest harvest, how YB Satyanarayana's mother and Balaya's wife, how Dalit women like used wild greens, tubers, forest produce outside the pure veg Brahmanical palette is documented as intellectual heritage, not as poverty. They have, as Anvesh Sharma has mentioned in the earlier slides, technology of food. Dalits were well equipped with it. They have identified, experimented with the different vegetables, leafy vegetables, along with the non-veg meat. They have used that scientific knowledge and they have provided the food to the family. If you see here, Dalit kitchen was a place of disciplined survival and of great love, not as filth, as dominant discourse claim. And our next slide. Yeah, coming to the other epic work by Kuram Joshua, Gabilam. It has a counter archive. If you see here, the bat, master poem of sensory and culinary exclusion. The metaphor, the inversion, sensory world reclaim. So here, the bat, if you see it as a metaphor, which never enters the temple but dwells in its dark corners, is the Dalit subject, spatially excluded, yet ever present and watching. Joshua's genius we can find in this inversion. The bat sees the temple's truth more clearly than the priest, who is blind behind the smoke of incense and purity of ghee. And the sensory world he reclaimed is the stink and darkness of Dalit life are not intrinsic, but they are byproducts of a forced spatial and culinary segregation. There is a deep, painful beauty of life on the margins. Gabilam makes the Atmiya archive not merely a collection of recipes, but a high aesthetic that acknowledges the nobility of discordant. And the next slide. Yeah, viewing Dalit kitchen or Dalit food as technology. How the Dalit woman used technology. Technology of the scraps, Dalit woman and the kitchen as archive. If you see here, the Dalit kitchen is a site of the technology of the scraps, advanced culinary knowledge forged under conditions of extreme scarcity. Like as in earlier slides, Anveshana has mentioned that how they have used sun-dried meats, wild greens and tubers, and radical soulful act agency, but not as a victimhood. Forest knowledge of the Dalits we can see, and also the dried brief and Voti Tunkalu earlier mentioned. Yeah. Like if you see here, radical soulful act, when a Dalit woman transforms Antu scraps into a nutritious meal, she performs a radical act of soulful archiving, forming a site of Atmiya resistance. Coming to the political turn of the Dalit food culture in Telugu states, Karam Chedu massacre, which was happened in 1985, the radical rupture. It was happened in July 17, 1985, Karam Chedu massacre, triggered by a Dalit youth challenge to dominant caste, control of the drinking water tank, a direct confrontation of the Antu stigma on water. Aftermath of this Karam Chedu massacre, Dalit Mahasabha was born, which has become a new independent political consciousness for the Dalits, which has become a base for it. Its significance is it went beyond Naxalite framework. Atrocity compelled the Dalit subject to move beyond class-based Naxalite politics towards an explicitly caste-specific assertion of dignity and resource rights. The refusal of pure water and dignified food was no longer a ritual destiny, but it was recognized as a crime against humanity. Yeah, here K.Y. Ratnam and democratization. Atmagauram. He emphasized on Atmagauram, self-respect, and he differentiated how it was earlier when Dalits were under the oppression, and how when they got consciousness and understood the democratization of the or kitchens, cultural kitchens, how it has changed. If you see here, the demand of self-respect was a direct reply to the Brahmanical self-purification movement. Upper caste urged Dalits to renounce meat and alcohol to purify themselves. The main argument of this K.Y. Ratnam's democratization is dignity does not lie in the imitation of the master's diet. It lies in the site of cultural democratization, rejection of pedagogy of the shame, pride in the soulful plate, and assertion of Dalit culinary identity. This was not merely a change of politics, it was a psychological revolution. Coming to the political turn of Gail Umved and her Dalit visions, counter aesthetics and cultural sovereignty. The Dalit movement did not merely desire a seat at the table; it sought to reconstruct the table itself. If you if we find the differentiation between the Brahminical vision and Dalit vision, we can clearly understand how Brahminical vision of the Dalit food or Dalit lives is stereotyped and structurally discriminatory in notion, whereas when it is compared to the Dalit vision. See, Hindu cleanliness as Indian tradition, whereas non-Aryan Andhra heritage. Ritual purity is equal to culinary virtue in a Brahminical vision, whereas in Dalit vision, materialistic and productive traditions. Here, Dalit food is equals to polluted and inferior, which Brahminical vision propagates. Whereas in the Dalit vision, it counters. It is a counter aesthetic to the polluted, and it is a building block of the civilization. Coming to the nutritional sovereignty, which was dealt by Smith et al., the science of stigmatized grain, jonna, sajja, ragulu, which all of these millets has high iron, protein, zinc, micronutrients, calcium, and glycemic stability. Here in this uh, paper, they argue that traditional millet-based diet provide essential micronutrients and glycemic stability that polished rice diets frequently lack. What the Brahminical system labeled as inferior, in fact, as a form of indigenous nutritional knowledge that sustained the community through generations of physical labor. Reclaiming the grains today is not a return to poverty. It is the practice of health technology superior to the pure but empty the Suddhi plate. I could not see it. Okay. Yeah. Counter aesthetics as dealt by Sujata, politics of taste, redefining the delicious. Here, how it is reclaimed and how it was labeled. It was labeled as stink and unpalatable, whereas it was again reclaimed through the Atmiya archive as aroma and counter aesthetic. It was labeled as scrap and inferior, and whereas it was reclaimed as culinary accomplishment. How Dalits view the Dalit food and how the oppressive Brahmanical mentality has viewed it. It has viewed it as a pollution and ritual exclusion, whereas Atmiya archive and our paper argues that it is an intimacy and community. Radical cultural decolonization, naming the stink as aroma and the scrap as delicacy, breaking the sensory borders of Antu. Yeah, if we can see the full transformation from the experience of humiliation to the Atmiya archive. See, from the ritual control, social death to soulful archive, and to political assertion and cultural sovereignty. Here, ritual control unto contamination by touch, food as the language of hierarchy. Whereas Soulful Archive, Dalit Kitchen as a site of ingenuity, love, and common survival. It has been viewed as social death. Dalit food has been viewed as a social death with a Brahmanical perspective, forced consumption of scraps, dehumanization through the plate. Whereas through Soulful Archive, Dalit Kitchen as a site of ingenuity, love, and communal survival. As a political assertion, we have seen in the Karam Chedu and Dalit Mahasabha self-respect, how self-respect they have portrayed, and kitchen to political stage, and the cultural sovereignty of Dalit kitchens, nutritional validation, counter aesthetics, which are equivalent to and equal to Atmiya archive. Yeah, coming to the conclusion, the Atmiya archive as a methodological intervention. The Dalit plate excess, not deficit. The plate was never a marker of deprivation alone. It was a site of great cultural and spiritual excess. The Brahmanical gates created deficit, where there was abundance of a different kind, different varieties, different way of handling the food, and incorporating the technology and the experimentation of the food and surviving and resisting the e- e- marginalization or discrimination to keep the Dalits at the margins. And, and if his technology of survival from Sadi to sun-dried meat, the counter archive reveals an elaborate material culture of survival. Scraps were raw material for civilization, not evidence of inferiority. It has never been viewed as inferiority, but from the Dalits orientation. Nutritional sovereignty. Science validates what tradition already knew. The scientific knowledge of the different varieties of leafy vegetables or the operating of meat. The Dalit diet of millets is nutritionally superior. This is nutritional sovereignty, reclaiming indigenous knowledge from stigma. The Telugu Dalit subject has managed to break the ritual power of Antu, creating a heritage as nutrient dense as it is spiritually strong. Yeah, you can see the references here. Thank you, everybody, for attending. Thank you, Gopal Chandrana and Anand, for this opportunity. Now, we would like to go for questions or comments, suggestions.
So thank you. Thanks for this lovely talk. It's really very engaging and thoughtful, engineered presentations. So I'm happy to see this wide range of subject you have covered in this one paper. So it's really very good. So thank you so much. Now the floor is open for any questions and observations. If any questions is there from the audience side, you are most welcome. So I guess the audience is completely silent with your research, this wide range of research. So, and yeah, there is something in the chat box. Anvesh ji, there is a question in the chat box. Can you read and then?
Yeah. I'll just stop sharing the screen.
Yeah. Why do we find no books on Dalit Telugu food, just like Dalit Kitchen of Marathwada?
Actually, like there is, I mean, not there is, but the question itself has meaning. Like until the Dalit kitchen of Marathwada, there is no such real thing existed, no such recorded thing existed. Like um, that is why we have we have introduced this Atmiya archive, like to get the real documented records of it. Like even though we know about the Derridian notions, Foucauldian and genealogy, and then subaltern studies critics as well. So what they do is they locate them. They locate all the the recorded ones, or they they register. They write about them within the institution, within the record, within the government. So they never recognize anything that is away from the institution or out of the institution. So that's one reason why there wasn't much research has happened. And with the recent research, with the advance of many other scholars, like the editors of this book, like now we are focusing, like we are able to see food as something that's political, not just the caste, but food something political, food something that is food something that can that can increase the level of discrimination. So that's one reason. But hopefully, we we express some kind of hope that hopefully in future we see lots of books on Dalit food culture, and particularly Telugu food culture. And we want to say this, like the one we have written completely the paper, and it was not ethnography. Like even Gopal Chandranan and Anandana, they told like there is a scope for ethnography. We can go in person and talk to the uneducated women out there in the Dalit kitchen who were the actual pioneers of these techniques and the cooking techniques and culinary recipe makers. So there is high scope to go there and actually make the actual Atmiya archive of the Dalit kitchens actually.
Mm. Yeah, there is a great hope for this ethnographic research because food is so intimate subject that very often it has been represented in literature. And as the question represents itself, there is a scarcity of the literature. And it's very unfortunate for us, for all of us actually. So definitely in near future, we hope we have a very positive hope for that. So yeah, there is another question in this
Yeah.
chat
Can
box.
you also please explain why open kitchens aftermath Karamchedu massacre stood as resistance? Even we had that doubt while we were reading the text. Like one of the papers we have taken in the references by Dag Eric, he said that in a specific sense that Karamchedu has been influenced than the before. Even before the Karamchedu massacre, even before the Dalit Mahasabha, there has been Adi Andhra Mahasabha as well, Adi Dravidian Sabha as well. So there are caste organizations as well, not just like, but why we mentioned about why the Dag Eric was mentioned about the Dalit Mahasabha is that the rupture is so intense that it brought every Dalit organization, every gave birth to Dalit organization that explicitly talks about caste. There are Naxal organization, there are left organization who talk about many of the issues. Like, but when this rupture, when this Karamchedu massacre has happened, and it happened on the Madhiga communities there in Karamchedu, like it has bring a sense of togetherness among the Dalit communities to fought everything. So you asked about the kitchens, open kitchen, but we have mentioned like even in the even in the text we have taken Antarani Vasantam, even in Gabilam more specifically, and then my father Balaya as well. They did not consciously went to this understanding that food will be and food must be mentioned and the food culture must be mentioned. It was written as a daily ritual, and the readings we have made, like we came to an understanding and analysis that after that these all this came from like after the Karamkhed massacre, there has been traces of talking about the food culture. There has been I have come across many of the poetries even in the 2024 where people have openly talked about the dried meat, the dried cow meat as well. So it has given a voice that to come outside and talk about all these things.
Yeah, yeah, great.
Yeah, I would like to add on your answer, Anna, as well, to slightly discuss to the second question. When he It's Abi, right? Abi, when asked, like, kitchens of Ramat Karamchedu massacre stood as a resistance. Like, if you see, after Karamchedu massacre, Dalit literature has evolved. Dalit movements in Telugu lands has evolved in a very profound and very firm way. Dalit Mahasabha, with the emergence of Dalit Mahasabha, they have, like, openly, the leaders from the Dalit communities, the intellectuals from the Dalit communities, openly started cooking and openly telling the society, the oppressive societies and the communities who are oppressing, that we can, like, our food is nowhere inferior, our literature is nowhere inferior, our knowledge is nowhere inferior. They started cooking on the roads. If you see the moment, they started cooking on the roads, people started coming onto the roads. The Madiga Dandora movement and all these movements has become rampant, and Dalit literature has emerged to a greater extent. Many novels, this Andarani Vasantam and My Father Balaya, Kakka, all these great novels has been produced, and in the universities also, people, like Dalit students and the Dalit Bhojana students started voicing out more after this Dalit Mahasabha and Karamchedu massacre. It has become the foundation for the latter movements and latter literature to be to spread across the world. Yeah,
So
that's
I think this,
yeah.
yeah, what my personal observation about all these things is when you're talking about this Karam Chedu massacre into this paper, that is, I think you're dealing with this political assertion of how Dalit food or Dalit literature in a very larger scale had changed. So there is, I think, a need to look into this particular aspect from Foucauldian analysis, because what we see, everything, whatever the Karamchedi massacre, what was the source of that massacre, is more important to understand, and then try to amplify or try to bring into this research how this food culture basically has been influenced or shaped by this massacre. Massacre is not just for a mob lynching kind of things. Rather, it has changed the cultural values, the social life of the Dalits, and all. So, in this way, if we somehow deal with this Foucauldian analysis, then it would be, I think, very great. So, yeah, is there any other question from the audience side?
You can see the big question. Atmiya practice.
Hello.
Yeah, Srikanth.
Yeah. Thank you, Anna. First of all, thank you for you and Sayana. So, first of all, I just want to one thing. When you use the words Atmiya and Antu, so these I just want to add this. What in semiotics there is a concept called connotation, signifier and signified. What
Exactly.
Ferdinand de Souza and Roland Barthes spoke on this. What they morely talk about the connotation, the underlying context of the word, cultural meaning of the word. So they also use the some italic. We That's why we use when we write the topic or these concepts like this. We use these local words in italics. Even Jimenskopf, Gisselskopf, how they use, and Bourgeois. These are the German words because they continue with these words because of they have a cultural meaning for that, so they don't want to uh, lose those words. So that's what I want to add on this from the semiotics perspective, Anna. That's all. Thank you once again, Anna. Yeah, you can share on this also if you have anything to say.
Yeah, yeah, thank you. That's something that we should have considered before making this as well. Thank you, Srikanth. And before answering third question, Anna, like we would love to say this because we have mentioned that with this paper we would love to come with the one or two coinages, new coinages, because when we talk about before talking about the Atmiya archive, we have also spoken about the nutritional sovereignty. we have this is the first time we are using the word called nutritional sovereignty, but it was taken, we adopted that concept from the food sovereignty, the concept of food sovereignty by Lavia Campesina, and that was about the rights of the community. Even that was about the rights of the community. They decide what to produce, and they decide which is nutritional. In the same way, Dalit has to be given the right. That is that, like, the Dalits have right to say what we are going to produce, what are the nutritional values or food as, even though you consider them as something useless or abandoned. The other thing is we spoke about the Atmiya archive being introduced as methodological lens. If it is an overstatement, we can say a new kind of news perspective to the new kind of reading, new analytical tool. We did not mention much about it. Like, how do we actually, talking about the first one as well, like, why do we find no books on Dalit Telugu food? So, in order to do that, we can do even from now. Like, we hope this works as an methodology. This works as an something useful for the further research as well. So first thing you have to do to document all these things is identify the undocumented, and there is lots of literature available undocumented about the Dalit food cultures in particular. And then the two is locate the practices in the literary presentations. I mean, we have located the presentations, the practices in the literary presentation, Gabilam and all those things. Like, if you go and identify some undocumented food practices, food things about Dalits, locate this. Try to locate this in the practices, these practices in the literary representation, be it poetry, be it short story, or maybe a story as well. So, and then third step is read them as an evidence of cultural creativity, as we have spoken about the dried meat and how they are made, and we have specifically spoken about the two, three times we reiterated it about the grains, the broken grains, because it has some value in the in the wage system as well. And Marriott, McKim Marriott, like, he worked on the South Asian food transaction. So he says that the kind of wage that Dalits get, also like the kind of wage they give to the laborers, also decide the social order, preserve the caste system as well. So the broken food is always given to the Dalits. The broken food is always given to them. So that's why when Sai mentioned in My Father Balai got, his father used to go for the millets, Jonna and Sajja as well. So it was part of Judge money is some wage, daily labor transaction. The upper caste, dominant caste get the wonderful fertile food, while the broken and unwanted food, like now it is millets are considered wonderful food. Earlier it was food of the poor people. It was considered like that. So that was given to the poor people. So when we talk about archiving as well, so read them as evidence of cultural creativity and known production. And the fourth one is this these readings, these locations, this identification must be triangulated in historical, political formations and the scientific or nutritional data as well. We're not just saying that they eat this. We're not saying that they are eating this because they knew nothing. We are saying there is high chances that they knew about this, because I gave you an example about Attapadi, my personal experience, that is very rich in nutrition, but they knew about it, but their traditional ecological knowledge is not at all considered in the official record. And after triangulating this, you have to narrate this not just as the victimhood stories. I'm not telling you to don't at all narrate them as victimhood stories. Narrate not just as victimhood stories, but as the cultural assertion. Like now, beef has been made. Like the third question is beef festival. Now we are talking about the beef festivals very openly, because we have asserted that we have asserted that culturally we made that we are not shameful of our food, even though it came from the different condition that we were, like we were bound to eat whatever we wish to eat, and no one can talk about that. So that in that way, that such narrations must happen, and this whole thing works as the methodology in bringing many books or many works in future on Dalit food cultures. And this is what I would love to add. We did not add in the presentation actually. And one thing, like this is just the beginning, and the methodology or the things like we believe, and this is not a completion of anything. This is the beginning, and we really hope and we really look forward that this methodology that this book carries, not just art, many of the aspects, many of the topics that they have selected will definitely contribute to the future further research as well.
Yeah, that is where this kind of presentation is really very helpful for bringing all this new perspective and this Dalit food culture. Basically, people talk about what is there in the Dalit food culture. What is the difference between Dalit food and other dominant food culture? So basically, as you people are mentioning that there is no such existence of Dalit food. Rather, it is a power panopticon that governs Dalit. It is not primarily produced by Dalit themselves. Rather, it has been the social structure that has been dominated, regulated, and governed by the upper caste or the dominant ideology that shaped this Dalit food culture discourse in present scenario. So it's very important, it's very potential to understand how this caste is being reproduced in everyday practices. So I have few observations regarding your presentations. So I know you have means you two people have brought very new perspective and you have worked thoroughly. I'm amazed to see this kind of wide range of topic you have covered in this one single paper. So the first one that I feel, as I previously spoke with Sai, that there is a need of ethnographic research into it. When you're talking about this Madiga people, or their food culture, how they are bringing, how they are cooking, what the practice they are using, and how they are transforming the things that are being considered as Antu or scrap into a very transformative nutritional diet or nutritional cuisines. That is more important to understand. So it is one thing. Second, when you are dealing with this from social lens to the political and then political to technological advancement, so I think there is somewhere lacking this coherence of thought. Whatever has been presented in the first part is really needed to be elaborated more nuanced manner or very systematically in your presentation and your paper as well. And I'm really very sorry that I'm not able to understand very few concepts that deal with Telugu culture. So it's a very regret for me why I'm not able to understand this Telugu, even being for 3 4 years in contact with Professor Gopani. So I hope Professor Gopani must be understanding is very clearly, and his intervention will really help me to understand all these things. So this is all about, and what is as I mentioned, when you're talking about this Karam Chedi massacre or other things, and so your paper needed to be understand from the power politics involved into this. So this is from my side, and I hope Professor Gopani will bring new perspective and new observations. So Professor Gopani is here.
Anand.
Yes, sir, please.
Thank you, Anvesh and Sai, for very good presentation, bringing new dimension of understanding, documenting the Dalit food culture. Good, so it's very, very important. So far, I was trying to get a sense that the minute you say archive, we come across a museum or archaeological sites. So you have a very commonsensical understanding of no archive.
Yeah.
You are adding a word, soulful archive. So this is something very attracts our attention. And it also makes us to very curious what could be the grounding framework for this soulful archive. And you know attempted to bring literature, movement experience, and other everyday practices. So when we talk about, because most of the times what happens is memory become one of the instrument through which you begin to explain certain things, whether it is in food or in oral traditions. So memory has a concepts help us to document. And second is the experience. Experience as a source of knowledge become very, very important. So these are two observations and so on. These are some instruments and the concepts that help us to understand the knowledge and documenting it and so on. So forth. Here, a soulful archive, because it's it's a very embedded. It is intimate to you. It is so personal, and whether it is translated in words or not, but still it is a source to you. Translating to the words, letters, comes later phase. Even if you don't translate it, it is with you. You are resourceful in a particular way. You your agency continue to be there in terms of preserving certain knowledge. So if it is so intimate, if it is so Atmiya, so who can translate? Is the same person who is having that soulful archive can translate, or a person who the second person translate? That how do you explicitly bring to the public knowledge? Are you getting what I'm trying to say? So there are phases of uh, uh, presenting this soulful knowledge to the public. One, you write an autobiography so that you translate. Second, you don't write an autobiography, but you express in certain ways, isn't it? There may be art form, there may be a song. There are different creative ways you express. There are many folk songs which brings their the idea of their food culture and their food world. And saddi, because very idea of saddi, I don't know, because in Mahabubnagar dialectics, we have a saddi means lunch. During my childhood, my father, he was like a bonded labor under landlord. I used to carry everyday saddi, means lunch to him. We have another meaning of saddi. It is a night food. Saddi food. Saddi. Saddi.
That is supper.
So because whatever left or in the night, morning we eat. So we will saddi buva. So we have I don't know whether it is related or not. So we have another main saddi buva, saddi. చదువుకోవడం అనేది different world, but I'm just trying to bring to your attention that saddi meaning. We have to explain that the context in which they bring it. Point is, first number is, how do you translate this soul for archive? First person, second person, the method of articulation. Second, saddi, what is the context, how people use it, meanings and cultural meanings. The second, in the context of movement, when you mentioned Karam Chedu, aftermath, what happened. When I went to, during my PhD, I went to Karam Chedu. I went to Chunduru. When I interviewed the victims, so particularly I went to Vijayanagara colony, where Karam Chedu victims went nearest town, and they had created a colony called Vijayanagara colony, Victory colony. So they have narrated stories like how did they survive. One of the aspects is immediately they didn't have anything to survive. And immediately children, ladies, and everybody needs food. And the nearest colonies, both Mala and Madiga colonies, decided to serve the almost 300, 400 Karam Chedu victims. Every day, one colony has to serve, feed them. Like that, there are 13 to 15 colonies, Dalit colonies. They took a responsibility to feed them. Every day, one colony. Then after 15 days or 20 days, they started an open kitchen. That means throughout Andhra Pradesh, people sent the rice, all sort of kitchen material, and they openly kept, and there are 15 to 20 people took a responsibility to cook it. And whatever they cook, they have to serve openly, they have to sit together and eat. There are three things to understand. When there is a crisis like that, when there is a situation like that, there are many incidents. One can quote a number of incidents. How did this cooking openly, sitting together, create a sense of belongingness? As still the Karam Chedu victims remember that a colony, Dalit colony, taking a responsibility to feed them is an implicit meaning that they are owning them. These are our people. We have a moral responsibility to feed them. It's extending a solidarity through food. Because they are not asking money, they are not asking anything, material benefit. They are feeling, victims are feeling when they serve food, they are feeling that they are in protection. They are extending the solidarity with us. Second, when everybody sent material throughout Andhra Pradesh to Karam Chedu, rice and everything, victims also get a sense of solidarity throughout Andhra Pradesh. Because they didn't ask anything except we have to survive. And sending a solidarity to kitchen material. Are you getting? The third one is sitting together, all children, ladies, male, activists, leaders, everybody has to sit there collectively, so that you get a sense of belongingness, solidarity, sense of sharing the suffering, sharing the happiness, collectively, reboosting themselves to fight against the system. And they refuse to take anything from the state government. In the initial stage, when fruits offered by Chief Minister when he visited hospital, a normal lady Karam Chedu victims refused to take fruits from him. No, we don't want your fruits. We want justice. So that become look at this, a victim refusing to take fruits from Chief Minister is a assertion. This is a self-dignity. And so that's where there are different ways in which this food as a signifier become important to understand what you are calling it as a Atmiya archive. So very interesting. Hopefully you will bring more and more, and very great insightful. We congratulate both of you, and hopefully you will engage more and more in a more detailed way. It's a very good project to bring a monograph. So thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. On behalf of Sai and myself, like, would love to thank, because while we were exploring some aspect like to work upon, and we had that idea that we should work on something that's unexplored, and at the right time we got this opportunity, sir. At the right time we got that opportunity that there is a scope to work on Dalit food culture, and particularly Telugu Dalit food culture, because I was talking to a professor in JNU that that was there in Marathwada, and maybe we can translate it. But at the same time, we got an opportunity to write our own work in, and that too very related to our very own lands as well. So thank you for that.
Thank you very much, Anvesh and Sai,
So,
for wonderful presentation. And this we are recording the presentation. We have recorded on Facebook also. It is live. People are watching, and we will soon upload to YouTube. Everybody can watch it on Satyashodak Academics. Anand, would you like?
yeah, so before concluding the session, just I have one small observation. When you're that it is an extension of your argument or your observation that you are putting. So when you are talking about the soulful archive, I think the framework of post memory becomes more important, because what I understand personally, that post memory concept is very robust and very vibrant. We are talking about something that connects very well to you, to the other society or other world. And in this sense, food becomes one of the parameter, one of the tool to connect with other people in the society or in the community people. So post memory, why I'm saying that it is more important, because there is something called epiphanic moment in everybody's life. When we are talking about food culture, or when this opportunity we have released this flyer, so few of peoples were somehow criticizing what there is important in the food culture. Is there any separate entity that we can call Dalit food cultures? But there are other people who are giving very well response, not only in India, but from across the globe. So there is something epiphanic moment happens, and that is very well connected with the memory. So whatever the epiphanic moment happens in one's life, it is become a kind of texture of that memory, which later becomes a kind of post memory and brings some newer aspects for research or for something that is more connected to the community people. So I think this post memory angle can be more helpful. So this is the only thing I have to say. Yeah.
Thank you very much. On behalf of Satyashodak Academics, we thank you all for participating actively. We thank speakers, today's speaker, and hopefully their paper will be very, very insightful, and hopefully they will engage more and more for the monograph length work in the future. We will upload this presentation to YouTube, Satyashodak Academic channel. Anybody can watch it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anvesh and Sai Kumar. It's really very lovely presentations. Okay, thank you so much.